Okay, even as we wait for that particular story, I think we can just start it off. There has been so much focus on this by-elections. Martins, before I took the short break, I mentioned something. You know, an old man seated might see further than a young man standing. Well, what say you about this? Of course, Jubilee, UDA, it's definitely a battle till the end. Which way do you think it will go?
Thank you, Rogers. It's true, last time I failed the test, but as they always say, success is a lousy teacher, very lousy indeed. And if you fail, you may think twice. I think the confidence which they are now exuding into Kiambaa and Muguga will be a surprise to them. This time, just as you could not imagine, you know, Biden losing Delaware. There they call it your backyard. Here we are muddling the ethnicity and all that. But it is true. It's a litmus. But I think the lessons from Juja and Ruri will be carried into Kiambaa. They must be very well organized now. That is the president's backyard. And I don't think it will be a good thing to lose. But I want to say that let democracy prevail. In any tough match, the referee, like the one we had in Italy and England, I lost because that one I was also supporting England. The referee was confident, was on time, on falls, and it was very, very commanding of the game. IBC is on spot here. According to me, they have to come clear because Kenyans have to realize that it is okay also to lose, but lose fairly. There should be no intimidation. There should not be rigging. Let the people of Kiambaa vote. Let Muguga vote. And let the winner win squarely and fairly. But this time, I think I'm not renegade from what I said last time. This time, I think I have a focus. Okay. This time, the Jubilee, you have to run with it.
Okay, well, it's definitely high stakes for the Jubilee Party. Prof, this is not ideal because one would think, bearing in mind our political history, this being the backyard of the president, it would be an easy, sure win for the Jubilee Party. Just the same way as many might argue, it happened in Matungu Kabuchai with Ford Kenya, ANC. When we go to Machakos, the Wiper Party carried the day in the senatorial race. What say you about this? Because it's definitely interesting to see the president or the party actually struggle to beat the deputy president's party in this particular by-election. Well, what say you?
No, I totally agree with you, Jesse. And of course, the sentiments by Mheshimiwa are spot on. That, you know, there are three factors that we need to look at. One is that we have a presidency that is coming to an end. It is his backyard, but then he is losing his power, in quotes. You know, the popularity and the excitement that we've had over the last 10 years, I think people are just tired, just as it happens in many other places. And this also applies to governors who are exiting. That you realize that 10 years ago when you came in, you are the star or the darling of the people. But now people realize that after 1 year, you will not have that kind of power. And so they do not sort of conform to the ideals of supporting you or being in your basket, and of course, making sure that you get what people think you deserve. But on the other side, we have a population that is getting quite disillusioned. In a way, a population that seems to be ready for a revolution. You know, this being in Kiambu, where our president comes from, we should not be sort of hearing of possibilities of Jubilee and not winning the seat. But because, of course, things are changing too fast in this country, that people just want to punish you for not giving them or for not fulfilling your promises, and of course for the challenge that we're facing today. I think that becomes a test to show the president and his team that, well, people do not support the kind of development or the kind of achievements that we have seen up to date. And of course, you should also know that people have expected or are expecting to have gotten more from his presidency than what we have at the moment. Okay. Number three is the demographic sort of revolution that we are seeing. We have politics that are not being driven by the younger population. People who previously have not voted, but people who are ready to do the opposite, to make sure that they get felt, they get seen, and their voices are heard. And I think that is what is happening, not just in Kiambu, but in many other places. What should we do then? One, of course, we need, or we expect that the ABC does their job diligently and with transparency and full accountability, because that is the test that will sort of support the democracy that we want to see in this country. Number two is that we expect to see the camps that are competing in Kiambu to restrain themselves and know that there can always be one winner and there will always be a loser. And just being a loser and being a winner does not always make you the best in politics. The thing is, if you lose, you get experience. If you use that experience, you will be able to use it in other sort of competitions. If you win, be also prepared that your day might come that if you're not properly prepared, you'll get sort of a beating that can easily push you down into depression. But finally, the democracy of this country has moved to a very high level. I look at what is happening in this country and what is happening in other countries on the continent, and you realize that Kenya's voice, or the citizens' voice in this country, has gone a notch higher. That we know what we want, and we say it, and we do it, even if the system does not support what we want. Kenyans are going out there to show the system that, we are ready to go for what we deserve, and we are ready to support what we believe is right. At the end, I think we'll see things or outcomes like what we saw in the US when Trump came into power. That when you get tired with a system, even if the opposite is a worse, is not a better option, then you go for that to punish or to show the other side that you have a voice.
Okay, Sido, what say you? Is there revolt in the mountain, or it's just amongst the politicians? But also, what's at stake for the UDA party? Because coming from, I might call it losses, especially in the Matungu, Kabuchai, and the Machakos by-elections, what say you about the stakes for the UDA party in the president's backyard?
UDA's stake in the president's backyard should be able to cement just one basic thing, that they are ready for 2022, and that they are also able to deal with this particular homogenic nature that we have seen where Kenyan politics is zoned out. So if you go to Mount Kenya, for example, that you expect people to vote in this particular one line. So given the fact that UDA is almost being seen as an outside party, led by an outsider coming into the home or into the house or into the home, they have a statement to make. And from my own views and analysis, they are basically testing grounds. Whether they lose or win, I'm sure they would be interested in checking the lessons that they will have learned in terms of digging deeper to be able to get the 4 million votes from Mount Kenya region to the last man. And that, in my way of looking at it, is really the deputy president's interest. That you realize that all the by-elections that you're also mentioning, they keep fielding candidates, and their interest, I don't think, is really to win. Is to profile the party, is to make the party known, and chances where they win, I think, really become very. And you've heard them talking so loudly and big about the wins which they have made. So the deputy president is keen to sell UDA, and is also keen to look at how he can be able to cement the statement that he is ready to get into Mount Kenya and take over from the president. How that plays really is going to be about the people themselves, and which is basically how and why I agree with the professor that our democracy and our way of doing politics is moving. And we hope that if that is going to be true, that the people of Kiambaa will also be very keen to look at the Jubilee candidate. This is a gentleman who ran for office in 2013, became second, and he did not leave the ground. He ran again in 2017. He did not leave the ground. He became second and he lost. And through his foundation, he has continued to be on the ground to support the people through education programs, health programs, water programs. And if it is true that Kenyans are moving from the fact that, we are looking at political parties and individuals who run those political parties, or rather who own them, then that assumption should therefore be cemented by the people of Kiambaa through the vote that they are going to give to the Jubilee candidate, Njamba, who has continued to sit with them and to stay with them. But much more fundamentally, Jess, is also to look at the other aspect, which is about transitions. That the president is coming from a backyard of an area where is expected to that he should have invested a lot of projects. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the Jubilee projects, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4 things from Mount Kenya or from Central, and so that also is probably supposed to help the president to reflect insofar as the kind of legacy that he wants to leave for his people. And if you look at the number of times that His Excellency the president has gone to the coast region, it cannot be juxtaposed or put side by side by the number of times that he has visited his region on official duty. I'm sure he goes there even at night, he visits his people, and he is free to go home. Yeah. But if you were to put a political capital and currency in terms of what those visits mean, economic development, closeness or proximity to power, because you imagine that your own is the one seated there and is supposed to make decisions. I'm sure that those are also things which UDA would want to sell out, and from the kind of narratives or rhetoric that we have seen in the campaigns, they are trying to build up on what the president's legacy and this transition really means to the people of Mount Kenya, and particularly for Thursday to the people of Kiambaa.
And Mogoga as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. There's something here which should be also on the ballot. We are talking of one party here, which is called Jubilee, with the vice president, with the deputy president who is still a Jubilee salaried president, DP. And now we are made to understand that we have two parties here, UDA and Jubilee. This is a political deceit. We cannot have one party splitting into two, adorning themselves and doing all sorts of manner against Political Parties Act. This is wrong, and I hope the Kiambaa people can sanitize this, that you cannot have one leg here and another leg here. You are fighting your boss, and you are inside. You are still in the state house which hosted you, and now you want to be on the other side. It shouldn't be like that. In fact, the moral standard on this would have been resigning, forming your own party, the way my party leader did when he was dissatisfied with the whole thing. And now you can challenge your boss. Right now he's contradicting his boss left and right, and you are earning the same from the same pot. Even the MPs who are campaigning there in UDA uniform and drawing salaries from Jubilee sponsorship. It is wrong. So I hope, this is why, if I fail to get this one right, I will not prophesy again. I'll lift my hand. This should be Jubilee thing, both seats which are at stake here, just to show Kenyans that you should not play politics or deceit. You should be genuine. If you are dissatisfied, get out. If the kitchen is too hot, don't be there. Just go, build your own bomber and start it, but not one leg here and the other leg there. It is wrong.
Okay, let's see how it plays out. Of course, interesting developments, especially with focus on this Kiambaa and Mogoga by-election. Affiliate parties battling against each other. We'll see who carries the win, the victory at the end of the day. Of course, right here on KTN News, we'll definitely bring you up to speed with the latest developments as and of when it begins, as of 6 a.m. when the polling stations will open tomorrow. Let's shift focus to matters that are affecting teachers, and this is all to do with the negotiations on the collective bargaining agreement, the new CBA, where the teachers union NAT and KUPPET have inked a deal with the teachers' employer, the Teachers Service Commission, where teachers will only be entitled to additional maternity and paternity leave in this new collective bargaining agreement, and there's no monetary benefit according to what was signed between the Teachers Service Commission and the bodies representing the teachers. Let's take a look at this. Of course, it has formed part of the conversation, even as many teachers might be affected by this move. No monetary benefit. Till when? This story covers that. Take a look.
We have come from far in terms of allaying the difficulties which are there and the anxieties among the membership and so on. Now today we have once again committed to subscribe to the collective bargaining engagement which is enshrined in our constitution and also backed by other international conventions. The basic pay was supposed to be, according to KUPPET, between 30 and 70% increment. But that one has not been factored in the agreement that we have signed today.
We have room to sit with Teachers Service Commission time and again in a review process of the said. I want to assure them that as we sit to look at the economy improve, room to fight for your basic salaries is there.
After frank, sincere and open discussions today, we are happy to announce that both parties have reached a deal. The Commission has therefore today, 13th July 2021, signed a new CBA with the 3 recognized teacher unions to cover the period 2021 to 2025. But as you have heard them say, we have signed, but there is room for openings if if things actually get better in the country.
Well, an issue at the heart of many teachers in the country. Of course, the Commission is now set to effect the 2-year salary review freeze directive for all government employees, and this was actually a directive given by SRC, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Gentlemen, quite briefly, your reaction to this particular story. Of course, they were angling for monetary benefits, but it wasn't meant to be due to the tough economic situation we find ourselves as a country. Prof, what say you about this?
I totally, of course, support the CBA that has been sort of signed between the government, between the teachers and TSC. Given, of course, I mean, it's a 5 years sort of period of time that this would be effective. And, of course, looking at the current economic status in this country, and of course the freezing of any salary increases by the SRC, I don't think they would have expected to get anything better than the agreement that they have on the table at the moment. There are 3 things that we need to look at. One is that teachers in this country are not the best remunerated. Their salaries are not within the best of scales in the country, but also compared to other peers across the globe. So their agitation against, I mean, for salary increases is justified given the amount of work that they do. Now, number 2 is that we need to look at the economic growth status, given we are in a pandemic, and also given that the country is just fighting to accelerate the recovery process from this pandemic. Okay. And this cuts across, and certainly, of course, you'd not expect to get any extra sort of generation of revenues to support some of these new proposals that have been put on the table. But number 3 is on the contrary, or on the opposite. This has been frozen, or the increase has been frozen until next year. Now, next year is a political year. And we also don't know how far the economy would have recovered, given that we are very uncertain during this period, okay, period of COVID-19. And of course, when you had the political changes that we expect in the country next year, then there are question marks whether the increases or the salary, the monetary benefits that they expected from the CBA will be affected, after that 1 year, which is sometimes next year, of course, up to 2026. So the challenge on the table is to look at the status of the economy, and of course be cognizant that you cannot focus on increasing salaries on one side as we tighten belts on the other side. Okay. But number 2 also, we look at the tax regimes that have been placed on the table by the CS Treasury, that they are taxing even the bottommost person, including those guys who are surviving, not living because of the tight economic times. So as they think about the teachers, let us all think about every other citizen in this country, so that we do not sort of support one side at the expense of the other.
Well, a multi-pronged approach. Martin Zowino, your take on this, because the union has definitely taken a hit in terms of membership. They were raking, according to the papers today, 144 million compared to the current 15 million Kenya shillings. So what say you about the new leadership in the union, even as they aim for a salary increment within 1 year's time?
Thank you, Jesse. Last time I told them not to dismiss what Sossion was fighting for so quickly and play clean. It does work that way. They still have to go back to the foundation of those fights, why those things were taken to court. It's a battle because, Rogers, it's not that there is no money or COVID. Everybody is blaming COVID. This country has a misplaced priorities. For example, take the sector of infrastructure. People think of bricks and mortar. The best infrastructure you can have in a country is how to shape young people's mind from downward in those ECDs to universities. Right now, we are going to have this Form 1. It's going to be a mess for teachers. I've just come from my constituency where I met 52 head teachers from secondary school because my constituency was the last in the county in terms of exam. And the factors that really makes them not to perform is enormous. They are in hardship. They can hardly meet their obligations, even in their family sector. So what I'm trying to say is that we have money, but our priorities are wrong, and we are servicing a debt which we were not supposed even to get into.
Okay.
60 point something, just going to the debt. I mean, so what teachers should do, stay the course. Somebody cannot give you leave without leave allowance. Maternity, what are you going to do? You're going to cause chaos in your home than anything else. Any employee has a right of a progressive increment of their salaries. SRC's resolution guidelines can be reviewed, but let us remunerate our teachers properly so that out of that remuneration, the products, which is the children's mind and education, can be rightly in place, and that the manifestation of that can be realized in future. But if we don't do these interventions right, socially and economically, we are going to be in a nightmare.
Okay. Well noted. Osido, add your voice to this, even as you talk about the newly signed CBA. The papers hinted at a crisis in secondary schools due to the pending Form 1 admissions, 100% transition gold. The number of teachers, according to head teachers, is wanting. The infrastructure within this public secondary schools is equally wanting. It might not support the numbers that are incoming. What say you about this?
That's quite devastating, Jesse, because this issue about education reforms in Kenya has been an ongoing story. It's been an ongoing commitment narrative by government. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that government has done, especially given its commitment to give strength to the education sector. If you look at, for instance, when CS Matiang'i was there, we had the same issues around 100% transition, around improvement of infrastructure, where even institutions of learning, schools, were given the opportunity to have conversations with private sector and with parents associations so that we can be able to have an improved state of our infrastructure in preparation to this thing we are calling CBA and, of course, 100% transition. Then came in Mheshimiwa Amina Mohamed, the same thing happened, same conversations, same issues, going back to what commitments had been made. Then Dr. Matiang'i came, and now same issues. Now we have Professor Magoha. You rarely hear about infrastructure development for schools. And yet we still have stories of children learning under trees. We still have teachers having to pedal on rivers, There's just poor commitment to the kind of narratives that government officials make when it comes to education sector reforms. And Kenya really, as Mheshimiwa said, the best infrastructure that you can have is human resource, and Kenya has the best in my view. If we can be able to just have a second thought, basically stop and think about the future that you want to give to this country. What kind of personnel do you want to churn out? If we are talking about 1.42 million young people that are being churned into the job sector every year, what does that really speak about how we prepare them? And so it's an opportunity for us, Jesse, as a country to talk about education sector reforms and also how we bring in multi-stakeholder approaches. There are things that churches can be able to do for schools. There are things that the private sector can be able to do, but that requires commitment by government through a matching funding mechanism and also through consultations and conversations. So I wouldn't say it's work in progress. Mm-hmm. We have had 15 years, 3 CSS coming into this particular sector to be able to transition, best practices and also to be able to help us boost and improve our education sector. So we need to attach those commitments to what they are doing and to be able to see them actually being played. Okay. On the CBA, I think the TSC was played, and we told them that they need to sit with Mheshimiwa Sossion. I hope Mr. Collins or you will consider that as free advice to look from Mr. Honorable Sossion and have a conversation. Otherwise, I think his regime will be clouded with a lot of mistrust and deceit.
Well, let's see how it plays out. Even as we talk about the education ministry, sharp focus, especially on Twitter, has been on the University of Nairobi and the raising of tuition fees, where I saw a couple of Kenyans saying it will cost you 1 million now to study commerce, economics, and law at UON if you're a parallel student. On the flip side, 600,000 and above if you're studying MBA or a master's in communication. The question being, will the poor ever afford this? The prices have definitely gone up, even as they have scrapped 8 colleges and functions from 31 to 11 in new efforts to cut costs. We'll be back with this conversation, and not just that. The CBK governor just yesterday, as he was sitting with the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning, he sort of mentioned of a pending crisis in terms of household debt, which is largely fueled by this unregulated